Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a really fascinating set of sources today,
Mm.
all centering on a recent, very public moment
Mm.
involving a prominent figure.
Yeah, and a specific interaction that happened during a White House press conference.
Exactly. So the core of this deep dive, really, is looking at reports that reference a particular New York Times article
Right, one with some allegations. And then there's the public response from the figure involved.
when he was asked about it
Oh, the
directly.
White House, yeah.
So our mission here, for you listening, is to really unpack the key details from that New York Times report, at least as they're laid out in the sources we have.
And then look at the dynamics of that public exchange. What did the sources really pull out as important?
Okay, so starting with the New York Times report, according to our sources, it had some pretty significant claims.
It did. It apparently cited multiple anonymous sources.
Right, anonymous sources detailing alleged drug use concerning this multi-billionaire figure.
And the way our sources frame it wasn't just like casual use either.
No, the phrase used was, I think, well beyond occasional use.
Yeah.
That's how the sources describe the report's characterization.
Yes, exactly. That phrase is right there in our source material describing the NYT piece. The claims apparently got quite specific.
They did. The report, again, as cited here, mentions substance use, like ketamine.
Ketamine, right.
And there was that detail, pretty striking, that the figure allegedly told people he was taking so much it was affecting his bladder.
Yeah, which the report apparently noted is a known potential effect of chronic use. That's quite a specific detail to include.
It really is. And the sources referencing the report, they didn't stop there, did they?
No, they also said it claims about ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms.
And then there was that other really specific thing about a medication box.
Correct. Our sources mentioned the New York Times report talked about him traveling with a daily pill organizer.
Containing numerous pills, something like 20.
Around 20, yeah. And the notable point, citing a photo apparently and people who'd seen it,
Was that some pills seemed to have markings consistent with the stimulant Adderall.
that's what the source material indicates the NYT reported.
Okay, so just sticking purely to what the sources say the New York Times reported. Claims of significant, non-occasional use, specific drugs named, the bladder detail, the medication box with possible Adderall.
That seems to be the core of the allegations presented in the report, based on what we have.
Right. Now, the other piece of this is that public exchange. How did this report actually come up at the White House?
Well, during a press conference, a reporter specifically asked him about it.
Peter Doocy from Fox News, the sources note.
Yes, asked him directly about this New York Times report and the claims within it.
And the response. According to these sources, it wasn't exactly a denial or confirmation, was it?
No, that's the dynamic that the sources seem to highlight. His immediate reaction wasn't about the substance of the report.
Instead, he went after the source.
He challenged the credibility of the New York Times itself.
And specifically, he brought up Russiagate.
He did, yeah. According to the sources, he asked something like, wasn't this the same paper that got a Pulitzer for what he called false reporting on Russiagate?
And he kind of pushed on that, didn't he? The sources say he mentioned a judge ruling against the paper, suggested they might have to return the Pulitzer.
Really emphasized that New York Times multiple times, apparently.
That New York Times, and then,
according to the sources, said, let's move on. Directed the conversation elsewhere.
okay, so let's recap quickly what we've drawn just from these sources.
Okay.
You've got these detailed, specific claims presented in the New York Times report, severity, drugs, the pill box,
And then you have the public response when asked about it.
which, based on our material, involved challenging the source's past credibility, using Russiagate as the example,
Yeah.
instead of addressing the actual claims.
And then trying to shift the topic.
Yeah. And just to be clear, this deep dive was purely about exploring the information presented within these specific sources you gave us.
Exactly. Strictly what was laid out here for us to look at.
Which, leads to a final thought for you, the listener.
Hmm.
How does the source of information, maybe its history, or how it's perceived, how does that affect the way we evaluate challenging claims? Especially when that source's own credibility is brought directly into this discussion like
Well,
this.
something to consider as you navigate information out there.